Why not suppose that when the fusion of the man's DNA and the woman's DNA is complete, you have the genetic identity fixed? That's when the soul is infused and takes over the processes of development. That's when my slogan is true. It's a baby. I said, well, perhaps that is a better way of thinking of fertilization as a process over time, but that's different than conception. She said, what do you mean? When a woman's egg is fertilized, she is conceived. Not so fast, I said. We need to be careful about our language here. You wouldn't say that a petri dish has conceived when in the process of in vitro fertilization, the genetic material from a sperm has fused in an egg. Of course I wouldn't. It's the woman who provided the egg that has conceived the child. But then, what do we call the situation where that fertilized egg is successfully implanted in a surrogate host mother's uterine wall? Don't we say she has conceived, that she is pregnant, and if the pregnancy fails, it's her pregnancy that is spontaneously aborted? She blinked for a moment, then slowly said, well, I suppose that is a more precise way of saying what is happening. Conception starts when the fertilized ovum implants itself into the wall of the uterus. And she went on. But that's all irrelevant to what abortion in fact is. Terminating a pregnancy cancels any chance of that child being born, and that's murder. Well, perhaps you are right that the question of what conception is a bit tangential to the main issue. Pen here, a mistake. All right. But clarifying the question of conception does seem to have one interesting consequence. If conception doesn't occur until implantation has been successful, chemical or physical contraceptive measures that prevent implantation are not abortive measures. They don't cause abortions, they prevent pregnancies. She looked at me with some irritation. That's all well and good. You can make our way of talking as precise as you wish. That doesn't alter the fact that contraception that prevents implantation denies the fertilized ovum its chance of becoming a human being, its destiny. And interfering with its destiny and preventing it from coming to term cancels its chances of being born and is murder. You raise another area of my puzzlement, I said. Why are you so sure that, left alone, the fertilized ovum is destined to become a human being? Well, it sure isn't destined to become an oak tree, she snapped. Now you have my prop. I'm glad you brought up oak trees, I said, because there's an analogy between acorns and fertilized human eggs that I want to explore with you. So long as you don't try to convince me that a baby is an oak tree, go ahead, she said sarcastically. Well, I said, in a sense, that's what I'm going to try to do, to convince you that a fertilized human egg is more like an acorn than you might imagine. Good luck, you'll need it, she glared. Okay, to start with, an acorn is the product of the union of the equivalent of oak sperm and oak egg. Granted. Any acorn has several potential futures. As an oak tree, as a meal for a squirrel, as bread for a human who reads Yule Gibbons stalking the wild asparagus, as part of the forest humus. These, by the way, were on my deck, and I picked them up to have a little prop to pass around. Which of these potentials will be realized is contingent upon intervening events and conditions after it's created as an acorn. Its chances of becoming an oak tree are really quite small. Of course, she said, what does that have to do with a fertilized human egg? Well, I answered, the fertilized human egg also has several potential futures. It may become implanted in a woman's uterus and develop into an embryo that becomes a fetus and is born as a human infant. It may split one or more times, giving rise to identical twins or triplets. It may pass out of the woman's body and never realize either of those possibilities. It may be spontaneously aborted. It may be stillborn. And with human intervention, it may become the source of embryonic stem cells, even in the future of cultured tissues and organs. Even if implanted in a uterus, it has the potential to give rise to a phenotypic male, but a genotypic female, or to be born with birth defects, or to develop an Rh factor, and so on. Every woman knows all that, she snapped. Well, by analogy with the acorn, I went on, the fertilized ovum has many potential futures, the realization of which depends on events and contexts, on where it is and what happens to it in coming days and weeks. Beginning to see where I was going with this, she said, well, it's still a potential baby. It's not analogous to the acorn, since only a very few acorns ever become oak trees. The probability for the fertilized egg is that it will become a baby. Actually, I said, it probably won't become a baby. Over 50% of naturally fertilized ova pass out of the body without ever implanting in the woman's uterus. This is not the result of contraceptives, it's just what happens without any human intervention. She looked shocked. So there's only a 50-50 chance? It's not even that strong, I said. Of the 50% of fertilized ova that do generate a pregnancy by becoming implanted in a woman's uterus, nearly a third to half of those don't continue to term but end in spontaneous abortions. So the probability that a particular fertilized egg in its natural situation will proceed to birth is only 40 to 50% of 67%, substantially smaller than its potential not to give rise to a human infant. To put it another way, for every 100 naturally fertilized eggs, no more than 49 of them will implant, and of those 49, only 25 to 33 will naturally result in births. Those are terrible odds, she said. Why hasn't medicine done something about them? Well, the restrictions on research on fertilized human eggs and on human embryos are so strict, it's very hard to improve those statistics. Tying the hands of science is hardly the way to make scientific progress. She looked genuinely distressed and seemed to draw herself together. All the same, even those statistics are very sad. All you have shown is that fertilization takes a period of time, and that once it is completed, there are obstacles to this young human being's realizing its full human potential. But this entity is still continuous with and numerically identical to a potential future human child. It is already that human being. She warmed to her summary. So, deliberately preventing its implantation or disrupting the pregnancy after it starts is denying to this individual human being whatever natural chances it has for continued life, is creating conditions that result in its death. That, she puts firmly, is what we call murder. Well, perhaps it is, but I'm not yet convinced we're talking about an individual human at this early stage, I said. Why not? She queried. It's the problem of twins, I said, the problem that bothered both Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. She crossed herself almost reflectively. St. Thomas had twins? She asked incredulously. No, I reassured her. That's not what I meant. Aristotle and Aquinas knew that some children were born as identical twins, and they thought that was a problem for dating the point at which the soul enters the body. Well, what's the problem? She said with eyebrows raised quizzically. Well, after fertilization, there's this period of time in which the fertilized egg and the bundle of dividing cells that arise from it have the potential to split into two or more genetically identical bundles, each of which, if it is successful, will give rise to a separate human being. She said, well, every mother knows that too. I said, but the problem is that twinning usually occurs after fertilization is complete and several cell divisions have already occurred. Your view is that the soul enters the being at the point fertilization is complete. And you've also said that this fertilized egg is identical with the baby that is born in about 9 months. So in the case of twins, which twin gets that soul and which twin doesn't get one? She said, now you're being too silly or too clever. Obviously, when God decides to make twins, he gives the fertilized egg two souls. One goes with twin A, the other with twin B. Where's the problem in that?